What's up, college sports fans? I'm Stuckey.
I'm Colin Wilson.
I'm Mike Calabrese.
I'm Maria Marino.
I'm Charlie DiSturco, and we're excited that the Big Bets on Campus brand is launching its very own YouTube channel.
You'll be able to find every episode of the BBOC podcast, live shows, and other college sports content on this new channel.
Not only will the channel be dedicated to betting on college sports, but you'll also be able to find exclusive interviews with former college athletes,
college football power rankings,
and updates on other topics like the brand new College Football 25 video game series and the ins and outs of the recruiting trail all the way down to the transfer portal.
Whether you're into college football,
college basketball,
college baseball, or any of the college sports,
we are the home for college sports, and BBOC is the channel for you.
Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the action. I'll see you there.
Hello and welcome to the Action Network podcast presented by BetMGM. I'm Sean Zerillo, joined today by Billy Ward to help you preview Saturday's UFC event at the UFC Apex. But first, we've got a very special guest with us this week. Joining us, number 15 lightweight in the world, 6-0 in the UFC, Paddy Pimblett. Thank you for joining the show.
Thank you for having me, fellas. What's going down?
Well, Paddy, let's talk about your favorite football club first. Liverpool season underway. Jurgen Klopp no longer the manager. What are your thoughts on your team outside of your sport, outside of your day job? I'm aware that Liverpool takes up a big part of your life. Your fandom takes up, a big part of your consumption. What are your thoughts on Liverpool this year? What are your thoughts on the new manager, and how do you feel about the direction of the club this season?
Well, the new managers come across great in interviews and stuff like that. I like the style, you know what I mean? He's straight to the point, so I'm liking it so far. Didn't perform the first half that well against Ipswich, but second half we come out and blew them away. So I'm looking forward to this season. I think we're gonna shock a lot of people. I think Arne Slot's gonna shut a lot of people up.
How many games are you able to get to a year? Is it? I know tickets are difficult to come by, but the stadium expanded, capacity is bigger now. Is it obviously with your schedule being in camp, being in the gym, it's difficult to get out and do other things. But are you able to attend still a few matches per season?
Yeah, of course. I still try and get to most home games, to be honest, because I'm local. Try and get to most home games. Like I'm going on Sunday against Brentford. Away games are hard to get tickets for, but still end up getting to a few of them. This season we're back in the Champions League, so hopefully get to a few more aways there. I went to Prague last season in the Europa League, so hopefully we've got a few decent away days this season in the Champions League.
Yeah, and it's different than we have in America because it's all of your fandom is focused on one team. I have my baseball team, my football team, my basketball team.
Yeah.
I think most people don't realize all of that fandom just gets combined into one passionate fan base.
Blazers the same, lad. Blazers from Philly, lad. So he's got the Sixers, the Flyers. What else? They've got the Eagles. You know what I mean? He's got all sorts of different teams that he needs to support. But in Liverpool, lad, it's just Liverpool Football Club or Everton, one or the other. And then other than that, it's like fighting sports and individual sports, not really team sports.
Paddy, are we ever going to get a UFC card in Liverpool? Are we ever going to see you fight at Anfield? I know that would be a career aspiration for you, to have a UFC card hosted at Anfield, for you to headline that card, and potentially to be defending a UFC belt at that card. So, in your mind, you're walking out at Anfield, this does happen. Which Liverpool legends are walking out with you?
The Scousers, lad, Gerrard and Carragher. You know what I mean, obviously.
I figured it would be Carragher, yep.
But then, by then, some of our players who play now could be retired, lad, so like, you're Virgin, no? Verge is the man.
So 6-0 in the UFC, number 15 in the lightweight rankings. The two fighters directly ahead of you, number 14, number 15, Jalen Durner, Rafael dos Anjos, both currently unbooked. We can get to some of the other fighters above them. I don't know if the UFC has reached out about a potential fight, but looking at dos Anjos, looking at Turner, either of those guys interest you, and has the UFC reached out about your potential next fight?
No, they haven't reached out to a potential next fight, but dos Anjos has got a fight booked. He's fighting Jeff Neal at welterweight. That's what I mean. I think I'm going to get moved up a ranking anyway, because dos Anjos has said he won't fight at lightweight again, and he's going to fight at welterweight from now on. So probably going to get moved up to 14. And then, but no, I want to fight Renato Moicano, lad. He wants to fight me. I want to fight him. I think it'd be a fun fight for everyone involved. We'd end up having a good fight. yeah, I reckon me versus Moicano's a good scrap.
Yeah, Moicano fighting Benoit Saint Denis in September. Dan Hooker, Mateus Gamrot just coming off of a pretty exciting fight on the last card. As I mentioned, other guys in the division, Rafael Fiziev, knee injury, Benil Dariush dealing with a meniscus tear from last month. It's a bit of an odd case. Michael Chandler waiting for the Conor McGregor fight. It's a bit of an odd case in your division because it's not like everybody's booked. There's a few fights that are booked, and a lot of fighters are sitting on the sidelines. I think there's a chance you could get jumped up into the top 5 and potentially given, a title eliminator shot. But do you think you're 2 fights away, 2 wins away from a title shot, or do you think there's a potential you're 1 fight away from potentially fighting for a title?
I'll let everyone else talk about that, lad. Know what I mean? I'll just keep fighting and winning. If I get offered Dan Hooker for my next fight, I'll take it. Know what I mean? Jump right up to rank 5, and then it probably will be a title eliminator next. So, yeah, I'm game for anything. As I say, any name gets sent to me, lad, I'll sign on the dotted line. I'm not shying away from fighting anyone.
No, I would personally love to see the grappling between you and Moicano in that fight. That would be awesome. On a lighter note, what's the funniest bit of trash talk you've heard from an opponent or even a fan in a UFC fight? Or Cage Warriors, anywhere else, I guess.
I don't know. I've heard some bad ones. I've heard some very bad ones. I wish I had other people here would have been with me at shows so they could think of some, but yeah, I've heard some terrible ones, but off the top of my head, I can't even think of one.
Anything you've said to an opponent to get in their head during a fight that you thought was like particularly clever?
No, I'll be honest, normally I don't speak in fights. I spoke back to Bobby, like I said a few things back to Bobby, but I can't even remember what I said back. But yeah, I don't normally talk in fights. Maybe if I'm on top of someone and they've done me head in, but that's what I did. I wouldn't want to start talking shit on the feet, lad, and then getting smacked and playing goat. It's not a good look, is it?
Yeah, I think if that fight with Bobby had played out a little bit longer, we might have gotten some good trash talk between you two eventually, but you ended it a little bit too quickly. And I think as you were choking him out, he didn't really have the opportunity to say anything to you. So
he didn't even have the opportunity to tap, lad. Never mind saying.
Yeah, that's very true. Put him to sleep. So I want to talk about your walkout and your mentality. And, you have a ton of energy during your walkout. I'd put it up there with any walkout in MMA right now. Poatan, obviously phenomenal. Volk, when he's fighting in Australia, coming out to land down under, tremendous. But your walkout, tons of energy. But then you have to flip the switch. And you get in the cage and you go back to, in your mind, going to the things you worked on in training camp, going to your game plan. How do you go from all of that energy in the walkout to then flipping the switch, calming yourself down, and going back to, I need to stand here and kick Bobby Green at range and wait for the fight to play out, not immediately go and try to take him down. How do you flip that mental switch in your mind from your walkout to the actual fight?
I don't know. People always ask me that, lad, but I'll be honest, I have no clue. That's why I always say I'm just built to do this. I was made to do this because obviously you have all sorts of doubts going through your head as you're walking out. Before you're walking out, when that music hits, lad, I couldn't have another care in the world, lad. Nothing can get in my head. And then obviously when the music goes off and you stand there facing your opponent, I tell myself it's only me and him in this world. There's no one else on this planet now, it don't matter. Just me and him and the ref. You know what I mean? That's it. No one else matters. So I've just got to hurt him more than he can hurt me, and I'll win.
Do you feel an adrenaline rush still when you're walking out, or are you calm when your music is playing?
I don't even know, because I don't feel like I have a crazy adrenaline rush. Because when I get in the cage, I feel sound, I feel fresh, I don't feel like I've done like a big workout or nothing. And in the last fight, I've watched it back, and I about 2 minutes 40, and one of my coaches, Ellis, shouts halfway. I can remember thinking to myself, fucking hell, halfway, yeah, I feel sound, hear me. Everyone was talking about me gas, and I feel sound, hear me. And I can remember going at him a little bit more, and then that's when I threw the leg kick, and he ended up trying to grab hold of me.
You're one of the few fighters that has custom walkout shorts or custom fight shorts in the UFC. Was that something you pushed for? Was that something they proposed to you? How did that come up? Because that's a big part of the walkout.
Yeah, I pushed for that, know what I mean? I put a little post up on Instagram. I tried to message Venom and stuff like that, and message someone else. Because obviously, I've all read all my UFC fights, but then I've always wanted to wear orange anyway, but you have to pick between red, black, and white. And where Bobby was the ranked fighter, Bobby picked red. So I had to pick between black and white. I was like, no, I want me orange ones. If he's wearing red, I can wear orange. Defo. They're not unlike at all. And then obviously we end up pushing for it and we end up getting it. So yeah, I'll be wearing them forever now. Like, unless they make another like customized pair, orange ones, I'll be wearing the same pair forever.
Do you physically have the same pair, or do they give you new ones every time or something like that?
No, they give you new ones every time. Yeah, you wear a new pair of fight shorts every time.
So, Paddy, we talked about the engagement side of fighting, right? Getting yourself locked in. What about leading up to the fights? Your camp, the days where it's a little bit more difficult to get yourself going. You know, high pressure jobs like yours, even mine to a degree. You're putting yourself out there, and there's a lot of criticism. There's a lot of pressure and stress that goes with it. You've been using your platform to raise awareness for men's mental health, which I want to thank you for, because in a testosterone-dominated space like MMA, I think it's really important that fighters speak openly and destigmatize conversations around mental health. I've had days where I can't get out of bed, just to be straight up. I'm sure you have as well, based on what you've said. I know you've had friends you've lost to suicide, which is horrible. I'm very sorry for that. And that's why you're in the position to raise awareness about men's mental health. So I want to ask you, when you're struggling, on days that you in particular are struggling, have you found any methods in particular to break yourself out of that fog or to get yourself back to your best?
Well, now I have an added motivation, you know what I mean? Because I've got kids, you know what I mean? I've got 2 little girls that I need to get out of bed for and go and train for and win fights for, and my wife, you know what I mean? I've got them that I need to do it for, but even before then, it's not, with me, like, it's not the motivation to get in the gym, it's just getting there, you know what I mean? Because I know once I've done my session, I'll feel better, and that's what I try and do when I'm down in the dumps, you know what I mean? Just make sure I'm going to the gym, because if I don't go to the gym and just sit in my house all day, I'll just get even more depressed and start overthinking everything even more. So I always say, when you're feeling like that, to connect with other people, you know what I mean? People that you trust, people that care about you. Sit around and get something to eat with them or watch something and just sit and speak to them, and you'll feel 10 times better after it. Like that for me is the gym, you know what I mean? Because most of my mates are in the gym. Obviously, I've got mates that I grew up with that don't come to the gym, but most of my mates are in the gym, like, who I see all day, every day. And like, going there for me is half therapeutic, because I get to sit around and talk to all like-minded people, and I'm taking over the fucking world.
Not just some guy, you're a pretty good athlete, but I get the sentiment. I enjoyed Volkanovski after one of his title fights saying, you know, I'm just a guy like from Australia. I just work harder than everybody else. I'm like, yeah, but you also used to be 250 pounds and can now get down to 145, which is a little bit special. I don't think the average human can do that. So Paddy, and again, thank you for, being an advocate for men's mental health. I think it's extremely important, and I hope you do continue to drive those conversations. There are obviously a ton of fights every week, right? We're here to break these down. I don't know how much of a fight fan you are, as opposed to like a soccer fan. Obviously, it's your job, but not every athlete who fights in their sport is particularly a fan of that sport. There's plenty of baseball players who play baseball because they're good at it, but they hate baseball. Makes a lot of sense, right? Are you watching these fights on a week-to-week basis? And if so, or just in particular, because it's a big fight coming up the Sphere, Merab Dvalishvili, Sean O'Malley, any thoughts on that bantamweight title matchup, which I think the UFC fan base has been anticipating for about a year and a half or 2 years at this point?
Yeah, that's proper grappler versus striker, isn't it? I mean, who can implement the game plan? I see him, Dana, not very happy with Merab for putting something up where he had a cut. Yeah, I see him fuming over that, which made me laugh. But as I say, it's all about if Sean can use his length or not against the wrestler. Because we all know Merab's game plan is to come in, shoot in, take him down, maul him on the ground, and just suffocate him. But Sean needs to keep it rangy, use his teeps, use his punches. And it's just, as I say, it's whoever can implement the game plan.
Speaking of watching other fights, you've got a teammate making his UFC debut tomorrow, Nathan Fletcher. What can you tell us we should look out for with him? What should we expect when he gets in there?
Nathan's got very, very, very slick grappling. You know what I mean? I think he's only lost once professional, and then he lost on the Ultimate Fighter, but he had a fractured leg in that, or a broken leg, something like that. So I think that's why the UFC have given him another chance, and he's fighting someone who never lost on the show. But Ethan's got a lovely rear naked choke. He's got a lovely, he's a brilliant grappler. He's got lovely top pressure, and he's a back taker, as I say, just like me. So I think he's going to get a rear naked choke in the first round.
Is that your favorite technique in general, the RNC?
Nah,
is there something else you prefer to practice in the gym?
Triangle. Yeah, flying triangle.
Flying triangle. All right, I'm going to look out for one of those in the future from you in a fight.
I know I've already got some in the past, lad, but the competition's getting better now, so it might be harder.
It is. Yeah, and putting yourself on your back, if you don't complete it, isn't necessarily the best move against round-winning purposes. I want to get your reaction to Israel Adesanya's fight against Rodriguez Duplessis from last week. Did you think Izzy looked a little bit slower or declined relative to his previous form? And what do you think in general fighters should do? Former champions, legends of the sport. Where does he go from here? Like, who does he fight to get back to the top? Is there even incentive, for him to do it at this point?
I know we could do what Max Holloway done, couldn't we? Because everyone said that about Max Holloway when Bolt beat him for the third time. Everyone thought, he might have retired, this and that. But Max has beat everyone else who's been put in front of him. The only person he's lost to is Bolt. So I'd say fight another few top contenders, and he could end up getting another title shot, because that belt could change hands. And if Strickland beats Duplessis, Adesanya's just shoe-in for the title shot, because he won the belt off him. And he's an absolute shoe-in for the title.
Yeah, he probably only needs one win to get back into it, especially
exactly.
Strickland.
Probably only needs one win against like a Kamzat or a Whittaker or a, you know what I mean, someone like that.
What about Conor McGregor? Are we going to see him again? I know Michael Chandler, sitting in the top 5 of this division, inactive. Maybe that's a guy you call out if he doesn't end up getting the Conor McGregor fight eventually, but it seems like he's waiting for it.
I really like Chandler. I'd rather not fight Chandler. I'd rather beat someone else up. I like Chandler.
So Dan Hooker instead.
Yeah, Dan Hooker. I was thinking the other week, perfect route to the title would have been Moicano and then Charles Oliveira or something, who's like rank 2. You know what I mean? That's what O'Malley done. O'Malley went from like rank 11 to rank 1 or something, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he went from 11. He fought Jan and then got the title shot off of that. And that's kind of why I was thinking, call out Dan Hooker, make it a number 1 title contender fight.
That's what I was about to say. Nearly everyone else above in the rankings have fought for the title anyway. So could do me versus Hooker as a number 1 contender fight if he really wanted to.
It seems a lot of times like the UFC makes title fights. They've got the date on the calendar, right? And they've got to fill it. Now that you're up in the rankings, does that affect you? Are you trying to stay ready in case you get that call when something happens? That seems to be an important part of the UFC process now, is being ready on time.
What do you think? I'm enjoying myself, lad. I'm about 90 key right now.
We had to do some math in American over here, try to figure out what that meant, how far away that was. But I got there. No, you're good.
It's about, what is it, about 196 or something?
Yeah, that's pretty standard for you, though, between camps. It's not, it's what you're used to making. If a super lightweight was ever created, a super, 165 division was ever created, and I know you used to fight at 145, you've moved up over the years, right?
No, I've said this myself already, lad, to be honest, over the coming, in the next, if I keep fighting until I'm like 34, 35, I'm probably going to have to move up to welterweight. People don't actually realise how big a lightweight I am until they stand next to me. You know what I mean? I'm not as big I'm not as tall as Jalen Turner, but I'm wider than him. You know what I mean? And as I say,
you look massive against Bobby. I was actually surprised by how big you looked against Bobby when you were standing in the cage. You looked the full division.
He looked like a featherweight. You know what I mean? Next to me, he looked like a featherweight. Even when we done the stare down on the Thursday and the Friday. On the Thursday, I think he looked at me and was like, "What's he really this much bigger?" And then on the Friday, when we done the other stare down, we had nothing on our feet, so like it's not like we had trainees on, and I was still much bigger than him. And I think it got in his head a little bit, to be honest.
And I've seen a lot of guys try to grapple Bobby Green, and the only person who's kept him down like you did was Islam Makhachev. So I think that speaks to your squeeze, and it speaks to your top pressure pretty significantly, man. You were very impressive in that performance. And
yeah, I would say, to loop back a little bit, is there anyone else from your camp we should be looking for? Anyone else a fight or two away from the UFC? Put us on game now, so when we're giving out these betting picks later, we can at least have the inside scoop on these guys.
there's multiple people, and I've mentioned them in like, I think I mentioned them after my last fight, lad, in like the post-fight media scrum thing where you sit there with the mic. Luke Riley, I think he's on everyone's radar anyway. He was meant to fight on the Contender Series, but he had a big kerfuffle with his visa. So he's probably going to end up having another fight on Cage Warriors and then doing something else with the UFC, because he has the most entertaining fights ever, lad. He's one of my sparring partners. He's absolutely quality. So it's inevitable that he'll end up in the UFC. Adam Cullen, another lightweight, another one of my sparring partners. I think he's either 8-2 or 9-2 now. One of his losses is a split decision that I thought he won, and all his wins are finishes, all but one of them in the first round. Shem, I think he's probably no Shamrock. He's fighting on a show called Octagon, another lightweight. I think he's 10-1-1. Most of his wins are finishes as well. Who else have we got? Liam Gittins, Cage Warriors bantamweight champion. I think he's like, some of his losses are at flyweight where he was cutting too much weight. I think he's like 12-4 or something like that. But yeah, he's got the bantamweight title. He's probably going to end up in the UFC in the next few fights. Probably another title defense. So I think now more people who are close to the UFC. We've got a brilliant flyweight in the gym, Connor Wilson, but he's still probably needs to win a few more fights and maybe get the Cage Warriors flyweight belt before he gets to the UFC. Off the top of my head there, I think that's most of the lads who have had a good few fights, you know what I mean, and are closer to the UFC than some of the other lads.
Have you guys seen a big uptick in people, one, joining your gym or just wanting to be MMA fighters in general from Liverpool after you and Molly got on the scene and kind of made it big?
Yeah, definitely. We have a few lads coming down now. We've had people coming down for years, to be honest, but obviously since we've made a bit more of an impact and based onto the scene, more and more people have started coming down, realised how good our training is. And like, we have a lot of lads coming down now, like Yusuf, Chris Price, George Staines, Sheldon and that lot from One MMA as well, and Dylan. We have loads of lads that come down now from different gyms, and even if they just come and do our morning sessions and still go back to their gyms, we have so many people training on the mat. We're probably going to have to get a bigger gym in the next fucking year or two.
Paddy, I want to take you back to your UFC debut real quick, because I have a question about the size of the cage, because your last 5 fights have been in normal size octagons, but your debut is in the Apex, and the Apex cage is about 33% smaller than the normal cage. Do you remember just feeling like a little bit tighter in there, or did feel things, feel like a little bit claustrophobic when you stepped into that octagon compared to the other ones you fought in?
To be honest, I don't think so, because that, as you say, that was my debut, and I think all other cages outside of the UFC are that Apex size anyway. To be honest, I think that they're normally that size anyway. I think only once or twice in the past I've fought in like the big actual full size cage. So it's no different to me, as I said before, a fight to fight. The amount of people that kept asking me leading up to that fight are, would you fighting at like 4 in the morning? Are you going to start training at a different time? It's like, no. Do you think I'm getting up at 2:30 to go and train in the gym at 4 a.m? Are you fucking mad? Have you been smoking crack? Fuck that. I just trained at a normal time. I said to everyone, I was like, lad, when my fucking song comes on in that fucking arena and everyone's screaming my name, do you think that I'm going to feel tired at all? No, I'm not going to feel tired. So why would I change my training time? And it worked, didn't it? You know what I mean? Other people did change the training time, and it didn't work for them.
So even the week of the fight, you didn't change your body clock at all? You kept it consistent all the way up to the fight?
Yeah, like some night we'd stay up a little bit later some nights, you know what I mean? Like on the Wednesday, we went to the 12 o'clock screen on the Deadpool versus Wolverine. You know what I mean? Then end up going to sleep that night at like 3:30 in the morning on the Wednesday.
Sure.
And then the Thursday I started me cut a little bit. So then we went to sleep a little bit about 3 in the morning there just because of the cut. And then the Friday I didn't go to sleep till about 2:30, 3 in the morning. You know what I mean? But still, I was meant to be fighting at 4. I would end up fighting at 4:30. And like all people saying, oh, you're going to stay up all night? I'm like, no, definitely not.
What time did you finally shut down, though, after the fight? When did you finally go to sleep?
Oh, lad, I didn't leave the venue till about 7:30. Got back to the hotel about 7:30, something mad like that. Or at the 7:45. Because obviously after your fight, you go and do all your interviews. I was doing all interviews. and then got tough back into my changing room, and it was like, oh, he's gonna have to wait for the fight to finish. And it was halfway through the second or third round of Bilal and Leon. And we just sat there. It was like, oh, and that's when the fella come in. And like I said, oh, Dana said he's giving you 200 grand. Because we had to wait for Dana's full press conference. Then I went and done my press conference. And then we went back to the hotel. So I never got back to the hotel till about 20 to 8. And then it was about 7:30, 20 to 8. And then was going to stay in the hotel till 11, but you'd have to check out at 11. So me and Blaze just went, oh, we'll get a brekkie, we'll get home. One of my mates come and picked us up. I was at ours for about 20 past 9. But then I came in and tried to get my head down. I must have had about 20 minutes, half an hour just rolling around. Didn't get a sleep. And then I never ended up sleeping until Sunday night at like 11:30. You know what I mean? Adrenaline took me through the whole day.
Oh man, yeah. So you stayed up all the way through it and then zonked out. Is that what people? Last question here. Is that just what people don't realize? That's kind of what I've gathered. People don't realize how much time you guys spend waiting around for things, just like waiting for the next thing in the locker room, waiting for interviews, waiting for the next interview, waiting for your fight, waiting for weigh-ins. Are you just spending a lot of your time just waiting for things to happen?
Yeah, just sitting there waiting. It was funny because obviously the Manchester card, there was a decision, then there was a knockout, then there was 2 submissions, and we were still in the hotel at this point. And I turned to Blaze and Adam and Chris and was like, "Fucking hell, lad, for these bonuses, I hope there's a fucking loads of decisions." And then, lad, there was 7 decisions in a row. I was like, I turned, I'm like, what was it at the start of the main card? Giga, Arnold Allen, and CLD and RoboCop. I turned to them, was like, one of them went, one of these is getting, in fact, it was the CLD fight. Yeah. They were like, one of these is getting finished now, big fellas. And I was like, lad, I said it, 7 decisions in a row. We'll have to wait, watch. And then we did.
Yeah, the worst. So we're bettors. The worst bet you can make, or the most uncomfortable bet you can make, is betting on fights to go to a decision. Sitting there rooting for nothing to happen, especially your fight if you're going for finishes. That's literally what you're doing as a fighter, looking for your performance bonus. You're watching these fights going, please nobody finish because I want 50 G's tonight when I finish my fight. In your case, yeah, 200 grand in England.
Yeah, that plays a little part, like, you know what I mean? It does. If you've already got a nice finish on that card, like Nathan's going to be fighting on Saturday, and he's probably going to be first fight of the night. If he gets a nice takedown into a rear naked choke, or a nice anaconda or something like that, if I'm him, I'm praying that every fight after it goes to decision.
Yeah, fair enough. Paddy, thank you so much for joining us today. This was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for your time. Thank you for giving us some extra time. You've been an absolute pleasure to talk with. And again, I hope we have you back one day with the UFC belt on the mantle behind you, talking about your title fight and recapping your glories in the UFC. Paddy the Batty, best of luck in the future.
Thank you very much. But as I say, it wasn't any extra time. It was the time you were owed. I was late. I'm sorry. I hate being unpunctual. You know what I mean? Especially for things like this. So again, I'm sorry. And thank you very much for having me.
Huge thank you to Paddy Pimblett for joining us today. Billy and I are now going to get into this weekend's UFC card. As I mentioned, going down at the UFC Apex on Saturday night. Main event in the middleweight division, Caio Borralho minus 250 against Jared Cannonier. Size plus 230. The over under 4.5 rounds. About a pick 'em price at minus 110. That goes to decision prop, juiced to plus 120. I'm probably going to go with the overs that goes to decision here. In fact, I kind of like either fighter, either Caio at plus 210 by decision or Jared at plus 600 by decision. This seems like it should be a fairly binary fight on paper. Caio the grappler, Jared the striker, but as we've talked about with other main events, most of these fighters who make it to main events are well-rounded enough in their lesser discipline to survive. I think the likeliest finish here is probably Caio via submission. And I think that leads into Billy's bet to a degree, which I also agree with. But Caio hasn't shot a takedown in his past 2 fights because he hasn't had to. He's fought guys who he's had the striking advantage against. I think here he has a clear grappling edge. Jared, also 40 years old, removed from a knee surgery, knocked out kind of in his last fight. It was a bad stoppage. But also he was hurt, more than he's been hurt in any UFC fight recently. It's clearly a declining durability, clearly athleticism starting to go a little bit, especially off that knee surgery at age 40. Volume, I think Jared has a chance to be competitive here. He landed a middleweight record, 240 50 strikes in his last fight, 2 fights ago against Marvin Vettori, but Marvin's also a punching bag. And Caio has much better movement. Caio is going to neutralize better, get this fight to grappling positions on the ground. As I said, I think the likeliest way it finishes is Caio via submission. I know Jared has power. I don't think his power is as significant as people may think, considering he used to fight at heavyweight. But Jared, I went back and watched this fight against Glover Teixeira. That was the last fight he had against a serious grappler. Glover put him in a guillotine, pretty tight guillotine in the first round, also had him in an arm triangle in the first round. Jared defended both. Glover got the ground in the second again, and Jared was able to get up and land some shots. We've seen Jared, though, taken down by Derek Brunson, held down until Derek tired out, and then Derek got him again in the second round. Seen Jared knocked down in that fight. So I think Caio kind of has him covered here. I think he may even be like a 50-50 striking fight if he decides to strike it out. He has really good footwork, really good movement, really good kicks to the legs and to the body, and I think he will keep his range enough that Jared is not going to be able to land 250 significant strikes. I think the striking count will be close, and I think Caio has all the grappling upside. So the line to me is about right. I think either fighter to win by decision or the fight to go to decision at plus 120 would be the place for me, though. Billy, you have Caio minus 5.5 on the point spread. Rarely see you lay the points. Weird to say lay the points in MMA, but rarely see you lay the point spread with an MMA fighter. Typically, you're looking for a fighter to win a round and taking the plus 3.5. So minus 5.5 to me indicates that you think Caio by submission or Caio finishing the fight is also much likelier than Jared finishing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so there's a couple points to it. One, you mentioned that it's probably close to a 50-50 striking fight at this point. I think that's fair, or if anything, a little bit underselling it on Caio, who it's hard to say because he just fought Paul Craig and everyone looks like, a Muay Thai world champion against Paul Craig. But his striking has improved. When we first got to the UFC, we kind of thought of him as a pretty one-dimensional Brazilian grappler, right? We've seen that a million times. Each fight, it's looked a little bit better. He's been in there with some guys who are mostly strikers and at the very least held his own. Jared Cannonier's 40 with the torn ACL that you pointed out. So Cannonier known as a striker, but certainly on the decline, Caio on the way up. I've said it when we talk about these point spreads that, we like the plus 3.5 because a fighter only has to win one round, where it's a lot harder to cover the plus 5.5 because winning one round isn't enough. You're still down 3 points on each judge's scorecard. You can even get away with one judge 3-2 if you've got 4-1 on the other ones. And I finally thought about, well, if I don't like the plus 5.5 ever, that must mean I think the minus 5.5 is a solid way to play that. And it's minus 125, which is half of his money line. I think Caio looks like the better fighter in pretty much all phases here. Cannonier is just durable enough, and the stoppage in the last one was just questionable enough that I didn't want to bet on him inside the distance. That's only plus 150. It's really not that big of a gap, all things considered. It's about 15% implied. So because of that, I like the minus 5.5. You obviously get that if he gets a stoppage that's rolled in there, but a 4-1 or, sweep on the scorecards covers that as well. Just gives you a little bit more wiggle room on losing a round, where if you're laying minus 3.5 in a 3-round fight, the fighter has to be perfect. This one, Cannonier has a big moment in there. We can still win the bet.
Yeah, I think Jared's going to be a value trap this week, and I think he might make the fight competitive for stretches, but I think ultimately Caio ends up taking it. I don't know if I want to lay the 5.5 personally, but I do think Caio is the side, and I think it's Caio or pass. I'm just having a difficult time between his ITD line and his decision prop, but to me, he does seem like more of a conservative fighter, prioritize the control, don't let Jared get up, keep him on the ground. I think he is the best control of anybody that Cannonier's fought. I think he's the best cardio and control of anybody that Cannonier's fought.
You've said it in the past about other fighters, but rounds that Cannonier wins, I think, will be fairly competitive because they're striking matches, and rounds that Caio wins will be very obvious. So if we get 1 or 2 judges swayed on those competitive rounds that could have gone to Cannonier, that helps on the 5.5 point spread a lot. There's just so many ways for that one to hit. You've got way more outs versus, minus 3.5 in a 3-round fight where you pretty much have to be perfect.
Yeah, Cannonier, going back through his fights, he tends to get up a lot. He's a big, strong guy, but they're explosive get-ups. They're not technical get-ups. He's not working his way, progressing through positions, and then working his way up along the fence, getting back to his feet. He's just bigger and stronger, and he pops up. I don't think that's going to work against Caio Bahaio. So, to me, Caio's control is going to be the determining factor in the fight. Move on to our fight of the night. Tabitha Ricci, about minus 125 currently against Angela Hill. Even money. Angie coming off of her first submission win in her career. And And I think that partially is making people think she has improved her grappling and has a more competitive fight upcoming here with Ricci, maybe on the ground. I don't think so. I think Tabitha Ricci is the better grappler. She's also 10 years younger, huge age advantage, athleticism advantage. You look at Ricci's last fight against Tisha Torres. Torres is such a better athlete than Angela Hill. She's much quicker, faster. I don't think Hill is going to have anywhere near the same speed or movement or evasiveness to get away from Ricci if Ricci wants to grapple. And I think Ricci has all the grappling upside in this fight at a pickup price. Billy, do you see it relatively the same way? And are you at all, the over here is very juiced up. Are you at all interested in betting Ricci by submission? I think that's the likeliest finish in this fight. So any props for you or just Ricci on the money line?
Yeah, I can see the angle for Ricci by submission, but Angela Hill is very durable, right? She's not someone who's easy to put away really in any methods. I looked at the fight to go to a split or majority decision because that is very likely here. Horrible line. I shouldn't say horrible lines. Very sharp lines, I would say, put out by the books. It's like plus 200, plus 250. You can't bet on the split decision prop in that. So with that said, that leaves me at just Ricci. The biggest thing is the age. If we just look at their resumes, Ricci is 5-2 in the UFC. One of her losses was up at 125 against Manon Fiorot in her debut, and the other one was against Lupi Godinez, who Ricci couldn't take down. Every time Tabitha Ricci has gotten a takedown, she has won the fight. We can argue about the split decision against Tisha Pennington or Tisha Torres. In the last one, it was close, could have gone either way. So you're telling me that she just needs to get one takedown against, a 39-year-old striker. Yes, Angela Hill's takedown defense has improved, and her grappling offense, to be fair. Tabitha Ricci's been doing this since she was 6 years old. Judo black belt, jiu-jitsu black belt. We're in the apex. It makes the clinch game a little bit easier for the judo fighter. Kind of everything's pointing in that direction. Wish I would have jumped on it sooner because she actually opened as a slight underdog, but minus 120 or so, whatever the best you can get, I'm still more than okay with.
I'm glad you mentioned the apex. I think that's a big advantage for Ricci, having the fence push in a little bit tighter, being able to clinch up against the fence, use that for takedowns. She is 1-1 in the apex, but that first fight, as you mentioned, they debut up a weight division against Manon Fiorot, who knocked her out because Manon Fiorot is one of the best fighters in the world in her division. And Tabitha Ricci going up a division to face a much more powerful striker in hindsight looks like a horrific matchup for her. I can't even believe that fight was booked, honestly, in hindsight, as her debut. That seems borderline criminal to be feeding a debutante to Manon Fiorot. Let's move on to our
second fight for Manon, though.
Okay.
It was Manon's second fight. We didn't know at the time, but yeah, in retrospect, it looks terrible.
In retrospect, that's a horrible booking, especially considering the hype they've given Ricci since and like the way they've progressed her career and matched her up. She's very evidently somebody that they want to give shine to. So yeah, putting two prospects they like against each other and having one of them die was not ideal, even though it was up a division. Favorite underdogs of the night. We've got kind of a consensus underdog and then also a consensus underdog / prop / live bet. So let's start off with the straight up underdog. James Yontop, plus 185, going against Slavikoslav Vyacheslav Borshev. I love Slavikoslav. He's been one of my favorite fighters since he entered the UFC. I just love his style. I found it difficult to bet against him because I think I'm a little bit biased towards him, but he's offensively tremendous striker. Beautiful footwork, timing. His hands are great. He's the striking coach for Team Alpha Male. So he spent most of his training time just getting wrestled by guys and teaching them how to strike, but like defending takedowns nonstop. Unfortunately, he can't defend takedowns in the UFC. It didn't work. You know, he's a master of sport and boxing, spent tons of time trying to defend takedowns. Just can't do it. Yontop, though, is not going to try to wrestle him. So you're getting a striker versus striker fight here, which you think would favor Slava, but he's also like minus 250 on the money line. I mean, I expected this to be minus 150, even maybe minus 110, and we would be getting recency bias against Slava losing to wrestlers. And you're like, okay, now we finally get a good price on him as a striker. No, he's overly priced as a striker. I think people have overanalyzed the fact that he's gotten bad matchups, and now he's coming back to a striking fight. He's been knocked down in his past two fights. Got knocked down by Chase Hooper. And Billy's probably going to talk about knockdown regression, but I think his chin is starting to go. I think it's pretty evident that Yontop is the much more durable fighter, probably the more powerful fighter. I think pretty clearly the more powerful fighter, but also 1 inch taller, a 4-inch reach advantage, better hardware. You're giving me plus 185. I like Yontop on the money line. I think he could get a knockdown, win a decision that way. And I think I'll probably bet his knockout prop in some fashion as well, considering the durability advantage and a likely brawl in the apex in the smaller cage, striker versus striker. Billy, you're with me on Yon Top, and I know you've got another underdog as well.
Yeah, 100% with you on Yon Top. I got him at plus 210, gave that one out in my luck ratings. You mentioned the recency bias about Slava Claus, but I think this line is because of the recency bias on Yon Top. We were all excited about him on the Contender Series. He came in, didn't get the finish, but scored 2 knockdowns in that fight. Then he gets submitted in the first round as a massive favorite against Chris Padilla, some guy no one's ever heard of. The reason I'm giving him somewhat of a pass on that, he had 3 different opponents booked for that fight. I'm guessing they told him at different points that fight was off. He might have stopped training or relaxed or just got out of that mindset. Oh, no, wait, we got a new guy, but this guy's a totally different style. Now this guy's a totally different style. That's a lot to throw at him, and then he's fighting someone who had nothing to lose, kind of coming in. If you're Padilla, you know you get another shot anyway when you do the UFC a favor, so, like, screw it, let's go for it. I'm willing to give him a pass on that, and then it goes back to everything you said about the striking, the hardware. Plenty younger. I want to say 6 or 7 years, maybe even more than that if we check real quick. Yeah, a little over 7 years younger. Speed and quickness should be there, height, reach, power, and you're getting him at a big plus money. So not as good of a technical striker as Slava Claus, but I think we can overcome that. And then the other underdog, you're betting him straight up, so I'll let you lead the way on GM3 because I've got some different angles there.
Yeah, we'll save yours for the end. But yes, do want to mention like the Apex likelier to be a brawl. 2 strikers taking the younger guy, better hardware. All of that seems to line up. I literally expected this line to be minus 110 and expected to be betting Slava at minus 110, projecting him to be like minus 140. But getting plus 185 on Yon Top, I think, is certainly the side. It's purely a pricing play for me. The other underdog I like, and this will take us into our prop section, Gerald Meerschaert III, UFC's all-time leader in middleweight submissions. He also has the highest finish rate in UFC history. Nobody has ever finished all 11 of their UFC victories. GM3 has done that. So I think you probably just take GM3's finish props or his ITD lines or his submission prop at 5-1 instead of his money line. But I think there's probably value on his money line. It's just he finishes all of his opponents, but he does tend to do it a lot in round 3 coming back. And that is the type of matchup he is here against Edmund Shabazian, because Shabazian is a front runner. He's typically finishing opponents in round 1. Even his last fight against AJ Dobson, he was losing minutes in that fight until he KO'd Dobson. I think Dobson might have been the underdog pre-fight, but the live line was ticking towards Dobson. I was going to bet Dobson live after round 1 because I always bet every fighter, every opponent against Shabazian, both Shabazian brothers actually, live after round 1. Neither of them have good cardio. And Shabazian tends to quit. He's a much better hammer than he is a nail. And the moment he starts facing adversity, he quits. He has bad cardio. His submission defense goes away once he starts getting hit with hammer fists on the ground. He turns into a white belt. So I think GM3 absolutely live here to get a submission at any time, 5-1. Because Edmund can shoot takedowns, get stuck in a guillotine, whatever, in the first round. But I think Edmund's likely winning the first round. He's the better athlete. He's younger. He's bigger. He hits hard. And if he finishes GM3 in the same way that Khamzat finished GM3, I won't be shocked. He hits really hard. And even though GM3 has survived a lot of fights, a lot of damage, it's easier. It seems easier. I want somebody to do a study on this, but it seems easier to clip somebody in the first 2.5 minutes of the fight. Then once they start getting hit and used to the power and they get into the fight, they settle down and the chin seem to solidify. But almost that first strike is there could be a shock factor. And Edmund hits really hard. So if Edmund just ices him on the first exchange, I won't be shocked. And I think that's why the live angle is probably best, because Edmund's round is likely round 1, but GM3 takes over here pretty consistently in rounds 2 and rounds 3. His round 2 odds, 12-1. His round 3 odds, 18-1. I like both of those a lot. Also, as I said, the submission prop and his live line after round 1. But if you want to fire a little bit, plus 250 money line pre-fight. I'm not going to argue against it. Billy, you're taking Neil Magny on the point spread, plus 3.5 at a big juicy number against Michael Morales. I kind of like this fight to go to a decision at minus 142, so I'm with you. I think the line is crazy. Michael Morales, to me, though, is not a potent finisher. I don't even know what he's particularly good at. He's very athletic. I think he's a mega prospect. But also, I haven't seen the skill set come together, and I don't, aside from just landing one big power punch, I don't know where he finishes Neil Magny consistently.
Yeah, Neil Magny, really, when he gets finished, it's by elite grapplers, and pretty much no one else. I'm not digging through all 96 of his UFC fights to confirm or deny that, but at least in recent memory, it's just one of those, how many times do we have to learn this lesson with Neil Magny, right? Like I made this exact same bet when he fought proper Mike Malott in Canada. Magny ended up winning that one outright. I still thought the plus 3.5 was the right side. He's not just going to lie down to these prospects, right? He's not going to win a belt himself. I think it's probably fairly safe to say at this point in Neil Magny's career, but he's a tough out for anyone. Michael Morales' last 2 fights, Max Griffin and Jake Matthews, he lost 1 round in both of those 2 fights. I think Magny would be a pretty heavy favorite against either of those guys at this point. Magny, with his height and length, is going to be a difficult matchup for Morales. Morales has a 79-inch reach, which is probably longer than everyone else he's ever fought. Now he's in there with a guy who can match that, if not exceed it a little bit. That's going to be tricky. And yeah, it just, I forget who it was last week. There was another prospect. The Dan Hooker fight against Gamrot. Mm-hmm. Similar situation as that one. It's hard for these guys to cover and win all 3 rounds, just like we talked about with the 5-round versus 3-round thing. You just need one takedown or one big moment from Magny to cover this 3.5. And then I'm going to put like 0.1, 0.2 units on his money line. That is mainly like a mental health protection on my end, because I should have bet Hooker's money line. I should have bet Magny's money line the last time I took this bet. So anytime I'm taking these big underdogs on plus 3.5, I'm putting 0.1, 0.2 units on the money line. You feel really smart when they win outright, but then you think about it for a second and go, I should have made so much more money. So yeah, that's how I'm playing this one. I would not at all be surprised if Magny wins a split decision or a close decision, but feel a lot better. Plus 3.5 is 2-1 odds, so you can't really beat that.
What a performance by Dan Hooker. That got me up and off the couch. It's rare that I'm watching a fight by myself and I'm like, holy shit, this performance, without a finish occurring, with just like guys showing grit and determination and just like getting the crowd. What a performance by Dan Hooker. I would really like to see him against Paddy. I know we discussed him briefly against, Paddy maybe stepping up, taking that number 5 spot, or like if they want to accelerate Paddy to title contention. I think that'd be a really interesting fight. I know Hooker has the striking advantage, but Paddy hits really hard. I don't trust Hooker's chin at this point in his career. And I think Paddy is the better grappler than Gamrot. I think Gamrot's the better wrestler, but if Paddy gets the fight to the ground, I think he has a chance of finishing the fight against Hooker, unlike Gamrot. So that's kind of an interesting fight to me. The more I've thought about it, I'd really like to see that matchup. Any interest in seeing Hooker versus Paddy from your perspective, Billy?
That'd be a good one. You mentioned Chandler versus Paddy. It got me real excited, but he shot that one down real fast. So, as the grappling nerd that I am, Moicano versus Paddy makes a ton of sense. I want to see those 2 guys rolling around. Striker versus grappler is always a little bit scary when you're rooting for the grappler. So,
yeah, Paddy versus Chandler would be elite. It seemed like they have a friendly relationship, and Paddy has some respect for him, and I don't think that one's going to end up happening. Let's talk some best bets for this card. Maybe finishing out with a live bet or a big prop for you as well. I'm going to give about 2 because honestly, I think Ricci's my best bet. I made Ricci's line like minus 160. I bet her at minus 115 last night. It is not on the app yet. I will track her at best available odds, which I believe are minus 122. I think Ricci should be minus 150. I think Ricci wins that fight 60% of the time. I think she's the best value on the card. Full stop. 2 other bets I like. Francis Fire Marshall at minus 140. This was a short notice booking. Marshall got massacred in his last fight against Isaac Dolgarian in round 1. That's what Dolgarian does to pretty much every fighter he faces. I bet Marshall in that fight, I'm pretty sure. Obviously, terrible bet in hindsight, but I do think he's a very good prospect, and I just think that performance aged horribly and is giving a little bit of value to his money line. There's clearly 2 tiers of fighters who come from Serra-Longo or Law MMA on Long Island. You have your Muravs, you have your Aljamain Sterlings, but then you have your Grigorio Charlamposes and your Nazim Sadikovs. And I do think Sadikov is in a lower tier. And I think Marshall is the better prospect of the 2. I think Marshall probably wins this fight 2 out of 3 times. So getting him at about minus 140, minus 150 seems like a decent bet for me. And then the other fight, I think there's value on. Cavalcante against Nunes in the women's bantamweight division. Nunes is a very popular underdog selection this week. That's why I'm on Cavalcante. This is not a tape thing. Just Nunes is being bet very heavily, and she's so much smaller. She's 6 inches shorter. She's at a 3-inch reach discrepancy. And by the way, Cavalcante landed 63 leg kicks in her UFC debut in her last fight. She's going to kick the shit out of Nunes here from range. Nunes, powerful, but she just kind of spams overhands, and she doesn't go for takedowns offensively. So I think she just gets picked apart for 15 minutes. I think Cavalcante triples her up on volume. If she doesn't get KO'd, I think she wins the decision pretty comfortably. Minus 105 for Cavalcante by decision, minus 135 for round 3 or decision. I would consider, because Nunes is cutting from 145 to 135. So I don't know what the gas tank looks like. Might want some coverage in round 3. Billy, any thoughts for you on Cavalcante Nunes? Any thoughts for you on Marshall and Sadikov? And if not, or in addition, give me your final bet before we get out of here.
Yeah, love Cavalcante. The one thing, I think Josie Nunes being forced to go down to 135 is actually probably a good thing for her at 5'2". Like having her fight featherweight, she like physically couldn't reach some of her opponents, which obviously makes it hard to knock them out. I still like Cavalcante. I probably not betting this myself, but your angle would be how I would. Marshall versus Bazooka, by the way, not Sadikov.
Yes, my bad. Sadikov and Bazooka in the same tier of Sarah Longo fighter for me. And yes, that's why. I mean, I basically mixed them up in my head at this point. But yeah, I don't trust either guy, and I think they're both lower level for their division.
I will continue as long as the price is reasonable to get bet against Dennis Bazooka, because you once said his best skill is trying really hard, which is great. Like, I'd like you to try hard, but if that's your best thing, we're in for a long night. No, yeah, my actual best bet is probably the Ricci or Yontop. I put in here Mearshart in round 3 plus 1,800. 4 of his 11 UFC wins have been third round submissions. He's the Homer Simpson in the episode where he was a boxer. That's his game plan. He's just going to let you punch him until he gets tired and then probably submit you. Usually it's round 3. We talked about Shabazian struggling as fights go deep. I think the better way to play it is live. I'm not faulting anyone who's not watching this relatively lackluster UFC event live to do that. So GM3 is a live bet, depending on what the price is, might actually be my favorite bet. Shabazian is 1-3 when fights make it to the third round or later. That one win was a split decision that he might not have even earned. So it's one of those things. If we get that far, we could see GM3 similar to his round 3 pre-fight line. We could see it at plus 1,000 or longer if he gets hit hard in the first round, and he's just going to be so much better down the stretch than Shabazian. So the live angle would be something of a best bet depending on the price we get. Round 3 is a nice little sprinkle. Totally with you on your analysis there. If he's going to win it, he's going to survive a bunch of damage and then get some ugly slow submission in the third round against a totally gassed opponent.
I have a weird feeling he's going to win a decision, which is why I like the live angle a lot, why I like the money line a little bit too. I know I said all 11 of his fights have ended inside the distance in the UFC. No fighter has ever done that. 10 of 11 by submission. That submission prop at 5-1, very tempting. I just get a weird feeling he's going to back control Shabazian in the third round and end up taking the second and third rounds and winning decisions. So make sure you have some money line, whether it's pre-fight or live. But I definitely think the live angle on Mearshart is elite, the right spot. Just have some coverage with round 2 and round 3 props as well, so you can scream at the TV when he doesn't finish Shabazian in the third round. But he will try to, believe me. GM3 will try to. There's probably not been a better round 3 finisher in the sport over the past decade or so than Gerald Mearshart. As I said, most submission wins in middleweight history. Highest submission rate in UFC history aside from Royce Gracie. 10 of 11 fights. Royce Gracie finished 90% of his fights by submission. I think he had one decision in GM3. Has the one knockout on top of 10 submissions. So yeah, very impressive, a very underrated fighter. Continuing to get older though, and I think the athleticism differential here in the first round is going to be pretty drastic. And if he gets iced like Hamzat iced him, I wouldn't be surprised. But that'll do it for us for the UFC betting preview on the Action Network podcast presented by BetMGM. You can find more UFC content from myself, from Billy Ward, and from the rest of our Action Network staff on the Action Network website and also in the Action Network app. Make sure to download the free award-winning Action Network app. Best of luck with all of your bets this weekend. Thank you for listening to the Action Network podcast. For Billy Ward, for Paddy Pimblett, I'm Sean Zerillo. Best of luck. We'll see you next time. And as a reminder, no podcast going forward, but we will see you on the YouTube feed.